So targeting tier 2 and 5, and forgive me for a little bit more technical chart here. You see on the left hand the fleet average in terms of HC and NOx emissions, which is 110 milligrams per mile right now, and the reduction is needed of more than 70% down to 30 milligrams per mile. That clearly is a challenge, but on the other hand, as I mentioned before, vehicles in the market are already a good way, have already approached that way to a larger extent, and the areas which have to be tackled are characterized here on the right. So we know what needs to be improved. For example, the cold start performance, and knowing what the enemy is, and knowing or having some ideas of the measures, of course, will lead us there. So areas are identified and measures are identified to bring clean diesels to a SULEF level in the future. This will be the system approach to, so everybody who's a little bit more in the diesel area knows about urea or SCR system. So we need a very high NOx conversion rate to reduce the NOx emissions of clean diesel vehicles. And what you see here is a system approach that we believe will then replace the current after-treatment system for diesels, which will be a combination of a NOx storage catalyst and a urea SCR system, simply due to the fact that we need to combine the very good cold start performance of an NC system or storage catalyst system with the excellent performance of an SCR system. And overall, that will bring us there without adding additional costs to the system. So, of course, we have to have that in mind. Complying with system regulations or with regulations in the future is one thing, but we have to do that with acceptable cost, because otherwise, of course, the consumer will not accept the solution. And we have first very positive results with this approach here. So we heard about the challenge in North America and the improvements which have to be made for the fleet average from a CO2 perspective. Now we move from NOx to CO2 emission or greenhouse gas emission. What you see here is the gasoline side, where we believe, coming from a pure PFI market, that with direct injection, start-stop, turbo, and so forth, and going down to hybrids, a reduction of CO2 by 39% should be possible. On the other hand, if you look at the diesel side of the equation, then we see that diesel already starts way lower, almost at the same level as a gasoline with direct injection, downsizing, and variable valve lifting. And then further improvements are possible, significant further improvements are possible, even without adding a hybrid. So electrification does not need to be the answer to everything. Cylinder reduction or downsizing in general brings us a lot of improvement here as well. And just to prove that this is not just PowerPoint engineering, I could give you any kind of numbers. I want to show you some real results now from Europe. And what you see here is the situation in 2008, VW Golf in blue, you see the gasoline version, and in red you see the diesel version, 1.6 and 1.9 liter engines, and both of them have gotten an update in 2009. And here, in the first place, you see the gasoline version, and that on the one hand shows a big improvement of about 20% over the 2008 version, and these are real vehicles, of course, even with increased power, so 90 kilowatts instead of 75. And that suggests that, well, advanced gasolines can come close or can even surpass diesels in the future. Fortunately, that's not true. And this is the diesel version, same year launched, and has the same power output as the previous version. It's a downsized version as well, so from 1.9 to 1.6 liter. And you see here the diesel even improved more than the gasoline, so the distance is kept. And this is the picture that we see in Europe, not just with VW and this particular model, but which can be seen with other models as well. So that suggests, on the one hand, big potential with internal combustion engines, and not just with gasolines, as some people believe is true. It's a big potential for both kinds of engines. Talking about the US market once again, returning here, yeah, there are some vehicles on the market and the take rate is excellent. What you see here are take rates as an average of the last 12 months. In the North American market, and these are vehicles where people have a choice between a gasoline and a diesel version. And what you see here is that for the smallest vehicles, so this is according to footprint, this chart here on the very left, you see the smallest vehicles, on the very right, you see the larger pickup trucks. And it may not be surprising that for the larger pickup trucks, F250 for example, on the very right, that the take rate is almost at 50%. For the Dodge, it's way higher than 50%. But that's not surprising. But on the other side, we see those vehicles which just have been launched. Passenger cars, like the Jetta or A3. A3 surpasses 50% take rate. The Jetta in one of the models has more than 80% take rate. You can ask yourself whether you need further a gasoline version if you can sell diesel to the whole market. And even other vehicles and brands which have not had a diesel option in the market, like BMW, for example, or Audi, are doing quite well. And the take rate for those vehicles surpasses the take rate for hybrids that you see here in blue as well for those vehicles. So what does it mean? Obviously, the consumer is embracing that technology. Now some words to electrification. And once again, of course, Bosch believes that this will be, at some point in time, this will be the future, and it is necessary to work on that technology, but it's still a long way. And this is simply the powertrain electrification scenario that we see. Once again, with a question mark regarding the timeline. And of course, there are strong drivers for powertrain electrification, and I don't want to read all of those here. They are very well known. But on the other hand, there are massive innovations necessary in several areas, and I just want to mention some of those, like the battery capacity, weight and cost, everybody knows it. Like electric energy demand that needs to be reduced, otherwise it will not be possible to have a reasonable mileage with the battery. Recharging infrastructure, as long as this problem is not solved, the whole topic cannot really fly in the market. And finally, clean electric energy supply is needed, because otherwise, yeah, you would replace maybe emissions on the road with emissions somewhere else, which does not solve the environmental problem, of course. Just some words to electric energy demand. And what you see here is where we are today, with about 35 to 40 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. So that's roughly the number, and the target will be roughly 15 to 25 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. So a significant reduction here is necessary, and in all areas, improvements are required in order to meet that. Once again, without that, it wouldn't be possible to have a reasonable mileage for those vehicles. And looking at the CO2 emissions and where they are right now and where they might be in the future, currently, what we see here is, okay, you've got 0 gram per mile local emissions, but that doesn't help you really if the today's well-to-wheel emissions are at about 257 grams per mile CO2, and that's way more than you can achieve with a diesel so far. And in 2020, a big question mark, of course, and if we count on all the developments that I mentioned, then maybe we can go down to about 100 grams per mile. But of course, here are some question marks. The energy demand has to be reduced, and of course, the electrification has to be cleaned up. Otherwise, this is impossible. And even then, we would need to compare this here with an advanced internal combustion engine, and I believe the distance will not be, or the advantage will not be too much. Now, finally, looking at the costs, and finally, we believe no matter what, each technology has to find a way to convince consumers that it's the right one, and that goes through the wallet, if you will. So technology has to be competitive from a cost perspective.